From the Oklahoma newsroom, it's time for Orange Alert, our weekly extended look at Oklahoma State football. I'm Jenny Carlson here with fellow columnist Barry Trammell and OSU beat writer Scott Wright. Guys, Oklahoma State getting ready to head on the road, which might be a good thing considering how they've played at home against Big 12 teams here recently, but headed to K-State on Saturday. Scotty, do we term this a must-win for the Cowboys?
It certainly feels that way right now. You know, we get to the end of the season and look back, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
Yeah.
But right now, it certainly feels that way. It's the type of game that when you get down to it, if they don't win this game, it really puts their bowl hopes in serious peril. They're going to have to pull an upset somewhere down the line, and this is not a team that wants to be the one that ends that bowl streak that they've got going right now. So you look at, like you said, Jenny, the way that they've been playing on the road versus at home. It's probably a good thing right now that this team's getting to go on the road and sort of band together and do what they've been doing for the last couple of seasons on the road. So definitely a game that if they win this game, maybe it gets things rolling in a positive direction, and we look back at the end of the year and say, well, maybe it wasn't that big a deal. But if they lose this game, it's definitely a crippling effect.
Well, and it's, Barry, to me, when you think about it, just 3 weeks ago, OSU's coming off that Boise State win. Everybody felt, or I think almost everybody felt pretty good about where this team was. Now the outlook just feels totally different after a couple of home losses against Texas Tech and Iowa State, teams that Oklahoma State has really, in recent years, taken to beating, whether at home or on the road. The tenor of this season has changed a ton in a very short amount of time.
Well, yeah, and part of that is they don't have anything to hang their hat on. You know, the offense wasn't very good against Tech. Defense was awful. And then Saturday, the offense sort of gets going, but the defense is even worse. You know, Iowa State scored 14 points in Fort Worth, and the next week scored 48 in Stillwater. So it does have this season in sort of an upheaval status, and the goals have changed. You know, before the year, you thought, well, maybe we can have a 8, 9, 10-win season. Get to 3-0, beat Boise State 15th. You're thinking, hey, maybe make it to Arlington, play for the Big 12 title. Now just making a bowl is you know, seems a stretch. So, yeah, huge game in Manhattan. Good news is the Cowboys have played pretty well against K-State in Manhattan, at least. K-State wins last year in Stillwater, part of that home field disadvantage the Cowboys have going. But yeah, it's a pivotal game. Let's put it that way.
Well, let's unpack a little bit of why the tenor of things has changed so much, Scott. Let's start on the offensive side of the ball. A lot of people, fans, criticize Taylor Cornelius, but if you look at that offense, right now the offensive line is clearly the biggest issue. In fact, Taylor Cornelius might be way down the list of things that are wrong with the offense, and I'm not even sure you can say he's done much wrong after the way he had to run around against Iowa State. What can the offensive line do? What do they have to do to change the way this offense is operating right now?
You know, right now it's an issue of attitude. It's an issue of staying focused. We saw some false start penalties from veteran guys last week. We saw the center snap the ball. Johnny Wilson snaps the ball when nobody else is ready for it. So there's some communication issues going on up there. You know, they weren't communicating what was coming at them from the Iowa State defense. So you know, communication, you know, Mike Gundy says it's not an effort problem. That's never been a concern with this group of guys that they're rolling out right now. So, and that means something. So they've got to stay focused on what they need to be doing. You know, technique is something that you can improve on as an offensive lineman, and they've got to stay focused there. It's a matter of doing the little things right. Mike Gundy always comes back to the word discipline in so many of his post-game press conferences. That's one of the big issues for the offensive line, staying disciplined in you know, how they're moving to get in front of blockers, so they're not in a position where they have to hold somebody. Little things like that they've got to do better to try to keep Taylor Cornelius clean, to open holes for Justice Hill.
Barry, this offensive line lost 3 guys off of it last year, including multi-year starters in Brad Lundblade, Zach Crabtree, Aaron Cochran, who had become a really nice grad transfer for him on the offensive line. So we knew it was going to take some time. How surprised are you that these guys are struggling so much, even given those departures off of last year?
Well, I'm surprised because, I mean, I don't know anything about any of it. But Mike Gundy was all fired up about him in August. So that gave me reason for optimism. And they did have, maybe not, everybody wasn't back, but they did have a good core of veterans and were able to supplement that, and you were sort of intrigued. What I don't know is how much scheme is involved in this. Our defense is scheming to stop that run and said, hey, Taylor Cornelius beat us. We're not going to let Justice Hill beat us. If that's the case, the pass rush hasn't held up either, as Scotty has said. So it's just it's a conundrum. The Oklahoma State offensive line was so solid for so many years under Joe Wickline, and the truth is they just haven't been that productive in the last several seasons. And it's not just a 2018 concern to me. It's a long view concern.
Yeah, definitely so. And I know that Josh Henson, Scott, will be doing everything he can to get that shored up. They had so much turnover in that offensive line coaching position that it may take some time. But in the interim, as you think about it, if they've struggled to run block at times, struggled to pass block at times, let's break that down even a little bit further. With Justice Hill and an offensive line that has its struggles, is there anything right now you feel like they can do to try to use Hill, get him in better situations? Because to me, he's that guy that is your best offensive weapon. So how do you maximize that? How do they do that, Scotty?
Honestly, I'm a little surprised that we're 6 games in and they've had the struggles that they've had, and we're still having to have this conversation, because I thought that we were going to see a lot more creative ways of getting him the ball. We've seen him motion out of the backfield. We've seen him come out and line up wide. We've seen him doing a lot of those types of things, but they're actually throwing the ball to him less this year than they did a year ago. Now, obviously, defenses were playing them different, and maybe those checkdowns were more easily available to Mason Rudolph a year ago than what Taylor Cornelius has had this season. But we're not seeing the ball go to Justice Hill as often in the passing game. Obviously, we've got the issues with the run game that have cropped up in a couple of different games, particularly last week against Iowa State, where he averaged less than 3 yards per carry. So you've got to get he's your best player, most dangerous guy when he's got the ball in his hands. You've got to get him the ball, got to get him in space, and I think that over these next 6 games, you're going to see him targeted in the passing game more often, because they know that they've got to get the ball in his hands.
Barry, what about the passing part of the offense as it relates to those offensive line struggles? We saw a lot of Taylor Cornelius fleeing the pocket, rolling out, looking for guys against Iowa State. Is that going to have to be the answer to try to get the pass game on track, is just him trying to make plays? Or do you think there's some things they can do structurally to try to address the fact that he's not going to have too much time back there?
Well, there's always different kinds of pass plays. You can run more slants, more screens. You can do all kinds of things to try to counter a blitz, or now if the front four is just getting to you, you're going to lose, so no reason to worry about it. But there's ways to counter pass rushing schemes. And the other thing is, Cowboys love to throw the quick fade. They've been doing that for years, and they got a couple of guys that can catch those, and Wallace and Johnson, and Cornelius seems to throw them pretty well. His deep balls have gotten better the last couple of games. So there's things that Mike Yurcich can do to try to snap the Cowboys out of this malaise, but they really just need to run the ball better. I mean, if they run the ball better, everything's going to get easier.
As I mentioned a little bit earlier, a lot of fans want to maybe not make a change at quarterback, but they want to see what they've got. I mean, this redshirt rule, they've got 2 guys that have 4 games that they could play and still be redshirted. Scotty, we're kind of hitting that mark in the year where if either Drew Brown or Spencer Sanders is going to play, this is about the time if you want to try to roll them out. How much difference could those guys make, and is there a chance we see either of them at K-State on Saturday?
I don't think that you're going to see either one of them. I definitely don't think you'll see Spencer Sanders. If he's going to play at all, it's going to be late in the season when they know that they're not creating a situation that he could burn up more than his 4 games to redshirt. They definitely want to redshirt him this year. Drew Brown, I think if Drew Brown is playing, it's probably a sign that things have gone really poorly for Oklahoma State on Saturday. I don't see him being the guy that comes in if they're up 25 in the 4th quarter. I don't see him being the guy that trots out there. I think Keandre Woodtee is the guy for that, and will continue to be. So right now, I don't see it happening. I know a lot of fans, like you said, Jenny, want to see what they've got in those guys, but it's one of those things that that you feel like the grass is always greener with the backup quarterback, and you know, I've never always understood that, but that's an approach that fans have, and we'll see. But I don't expect either of them to be involved this week.
Well, and I'm the same way. I'm not sure that if they had a better option that they wouldn't be playing him, Barry, because I mean, coaches like to win. You don't like to lose to Tech or to Iowa State, and that's what we've seen. I think some fans are saying, hey, you got beat by true freshmen, why not play a true freshman? Seems like a false equivalency to me.
Yeah, now, listen, I am fully on board the Spencer Sanders needs to play bandwagon as long as he can play deep safety and guard the long ball. Then I think he ought to play 70 snaps. But the idea that they need to do something with that OSU offense, you know, in terms of quarterback change, hey, defense is where the bells are going off for me, even with the offensive line trouble. I mean, to give up 48 points, most of it well-earned by the Cyclones, is not acceptable football. So Taylor Cornelius has drawn the brunt of the criticism and the frustration. People are taking their eyes off the ball. He's actually getting better. He's playing better. He's not the problem of this Oklahoma State football team. If Spencer Sanders had been you know, a two-star quarterback from North Dakota, nobody would be too excited about it. But he's, you know, this great recruit from Denton, which is a, you know, J.W. Walsh territory, and everybody's all fired up. So they want to play him. Drew Brown comes from the, you know, the wild, wild west and had a lot of big numbers. So people are excited to see this other stuff. But Taylor Cornelius has actually played pretty well, and he's not the problem.
I'll also say this about Spencer Sanders, guys. He's a true freshman who's had injury problems, and they've got an offensive line that has their quarterback on the run. I'm not sure either physically or mentally they want to throw him into the fire just yet. Maybe the time will come. Maybe that'll happen eventually. But
and here's the other thing about that. When you talk about the offensive line trouble, Taylor Cornelius has had to run for his life. Well, that's the one thing he can do that we didn't even know, really.
Right.
He can run for his life. He's pretty mobile. He's made a lot of plays with his feet. If he was a statue back there just getting hit, it's what happened to Dax Garman in 2014. You know, you sort of see it. Hey, let's get somebody in there who can move around a little bit. Taylor Cornelius can move around a little bit.
He's also 4 inches taller and about 30 pounds heavier than Spencer Sanders, so when he gets hit, he's able to take it a little bit better. Okay, guys, as Barry mentioned, defense is a huge concern. It cost Glenn Spencer his job last year, brought Jim Knowles in, some thought that things would improve. Scott, they're still struggling in some of the very same ways they've struggled for years. Mike Gundy said on Monday that a lot of it is a secondary that's young, is learning on the fly. If they had better options, they'd be playing more veteran guys. Is that just the reality that they've got a secondary that is having to learn as they go, and that can be troublesome in the Big 12?
Yeah, it is. I mean, those guys are learning a new defense. Jim Knowles is learning a new set of players. I mean, you know, he's been on campus at Oklahoma State for 10 months now, but he's only had 6 games where the live bullets are flying to learn what these guys are good at, what they're capable of, where they're going to make their mistakes. So it's still a learning process for the secondary, and yes, there are a lot of young guys back there. Mike Gundy talks about Malcolm Rodriguez like he's a fourth-year senior, but he's a true sophomore who didn't play safety at all last year, only played on special teams. So you know, he's become one of the most reliable guys in that secondary. But it's just because that's the type of player that he is, the type of attitude that he brings, not because he has a ton of experience behind him. So you know, he's a valuable guy to this secondary, Malcolm Rodriguez is, and they really need him healthy and on the field, because when he's out there, that gives them you know, that other spot where they've got Tabo Mwaniki and Jarek Bernard rotating. That minimizes how many true freshmen are on the field at one time in the secondary. You take Malcolm Rodriguez out, all of a sudden Colby Peel is into a different position than he'd been playing all through preseason camp, and things are a little bit rough back there. So they need Malcolm Rodriguez healthy. They need Kenneth Edison-Magruder being impactful in what he's doing when he's on the field. So you know, they are young, but they've got some guys who they think can be leaders out there and pull this thing together from this point. It's a matter of everybody getting on the same page, communicating, and knowing where to look and who to be following, and all of those sorts of things.
Barry, for the struggles that the defense has had, giving up a lot of points to Texas Tech, you know, it happens. Texas Tech is an offense that can be pretty prolific. But a week ago, for that team to give up 48 points to Iowa State, a team that had been averaging 14 points heading into that game, to me that set off alarms that hadn't previously been going off. So what conceivably can Oklahoma State do to shore things up? Because young guys are young. That's going to be a problem in the secondary. What realistically can Jim Knowles do to try to improve the performance he's getting out of these guys?
Well, first of all, let's put the blame where it lies, and that's with the coaching staff, because Mike Gundy admitted that, hey, we just got snookered. We weren't prepared for another quarterback who might be mobile, might run a lot of option, those kinds of things. And Brock Purdy, the freshman at Iowa State, was sensational. Cowboys had not prepared for any of that stuff, and they were woefully overmatched in that game. So, you know, a better game plan, better preparation on the coaching end would help, but they've got to defend the deep ball better also. The Cowboys are getting burned deep, and you know, Purdy is not a great passer yet, I don't think. But Cowboys were able to, or the Cyclones were able to get one-on-one matchups deep and win jump balls, or just run free and get open. So, got to play better in the back end. I think the OSU line and the linebackers are still playing pretty solid, but that secondary is struggled. It's always a struggle in the Big 12. It's not easy, but those safeties need to grow up, and they need to get some help from their coaching staff.
We saw the secondary be in position to make some plays that they then didn't make. You know, it's turning around. It's finding the ball and maybe some things that they can do. And K-State, let's remember, a whole different challenge because they're not a throwing team. They're definitely in the more ground-locked sort of team. So we'll see if that doesn't change on Saturday in Manhattan, which I think kind of leads into our picks, guys, because even all this talk of troubles and woe and problems at OSU, we still have an across-the-board sweep for OSU to go to K-State and win. Scott, let's start with you. You've got the Cowboys winning 44-34, scoring a lot of points and winning by a couple scores.
Yeah, you know, now that we're a few days since the time that I made that pick, you said it, and I kind of cringed a little bit. I don't know, 44 now feels like a lot to me. I think that I do think that Oklahoma State will have some offensive success against Kansas State. I think that that they're going to be able to do things that that they're comfortable doing, making quick moves to get the ball out of the pocket, get Justice Hill involved in ways maybe that we haven't seen to this point. But I think that they're going to be able to have some success. Kansas State will find ways to score points on this defense. I mean, everybody has in Big 12 play, including Kansas. So you have to expect that that Kansas State is going to be prepared to go out there and attack a defense that is really more designed for going up against teams like Texas Tech than a team like Kansas State. So you know, they'll find ways to score points and have an impact on the game. But I still think Oklahoma State wins, and I think that it's in the 10-point range. Okay,
Barry, you've got a little bit closer, tighter fit for Oklahoma State. 35-31, the Cowboys win in Manhattan. Why the closer game?
Well, these teams have been playing close games and high-scoring games last few years. 45-40, 43-37, 36-34. That's the last three OSU K-State games. So, you know, we talk about the mess that OSU's in. Kansas State's in a bigger mess. This is not a vintage Bill Snyder team. This is a team that's in a little bit of disarray. Been some quarterback shuffling that's sort of mysterious. You don't know what they're doing there. It played tough against Texas, but have had some other games just got away from them. So, you know, they go to Baylor and get beat 37-34. So I think the Cowboys can win, but I think it will be high scoring. I think it will be close.
I've got a little higher score, back to the 10-point spread, 37-27. This is a game the Cowboys should win. Over the years, as they've gotten better as a program, they've typically won games that they were supposed to win. That hasn't happened in these two losses so far this year, so they need to get back on track to where they're winning against teams they're supposed to win against. I think they do it, but it's going to be tough. K-State always tough at home. They'll have a big home crowd, as they always do. 11 o'clock start up in Manhattan on Saturday, so be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com every day in the Oklahoman.